Welcome to the Explainer. Okay, let's dive right into a genuinely fascinating step-by-step guide on how to successfully gift property under Muslim law without making those critical, deal-breaking errors. Whether you're a law student, a practitioner, or honestly, just someone curious about how wealth is legally transferred across different traditions, this is going to be incredibly insightful. We're looking at the doctrine of Hiba, which is essentially Islamic gift law, and we're going to break down these complex, handwritten legal principles into a really clear, actionable playbook.
Here's our playbook for today. 1. The basics of Hiba. 2. The 3 steps to a gift. 3. Splitting the unsplittable, which is also known as musha. 4. Strings attached and revocations. And finally, 5. Gifts with an exchange.
Section 1. The basics of Hiba.
So let's start right at the foundation. What actually is a Hiba? Getting this basic definition right is absolutely crucial before we get into the heavier mechanics. Put simply, a Hiba is when you make another person the owner of your property immediately, completely, without taking any consideration or payment from them in return. Now, for you to legally pull this off, there are some strict capacity requirements. You've got to be of a capable mind, you definitely cannot be a minor, and crucially, you must have bona fide intent. That means you can't just be doing this to hide assets and defraud your creditors. If you try that trick, the gift is totally voidable at their option. Oh, and a quick but important side note. You cannot gift something to an unborn person. That's entirely void.
This right here brilliantly illustrates a major difference that honestly confuses people all the time. The difference between a hiba, which happens while you're still alive, and a will, which obviously takes effect after death. As established in the precedent case of Kajora Nisa v. Roshan Jahan, a Muslim can actually dispose of their entire property as a gift, completely excluding their heirs. You can literally give the whole thing away. A will, on the other hand, that has very strict legal limits on how much of the estate can actually be given away. The only real exception to the Hiba rule is if it's considered a deathbed gift, which brings in its own unique set of rules.
Section 2. 3 steps to a gift.
So how do we actually execute this transfer? Let's get into the core mechanics. It's elegantly simple, but strictly enforced. According to the case of Hafiza Bibi v. Sheikh Farid, these 3 steps are the absolute, non-negotiable essentials for a valid gift. 1. The donor has to declare the gift. 2. The person receiving it, the dani, has to accept it, and that acceptance can be either express or implied. And 3. There must be delivery of possession. It's a 3-legged stool. Miss just one of these steps, and the entire legal structure completely falls apart.
Now here's where it gets wild. Look at how informal this can be. In the case of Mahbub Sahab v. Syed Ismail, it was definitively held that a gift doesn't even need to be in writing. Think about that for a second. You can permanently transfer an entire piece of real estate completely verbally. No writing is required, which means there's absolutely no need for formal legal registration either. Pretty amazing, right?
But we need to talk about step 3, delivery. Delivery can be actual, meaning you physically hand something over. Or it can be constructive, which basically means transferring the means of control, like handing someone the keys to a house. Think of delivery exactly like passing the baton in a relay race. As noted in the Abu Khan v. Mariam Bibi case, the donor must fully divest themselves of possession. You have to completely let go of that baton so the other person can run with it. If you keep holding on to it, even just a little bit, the gift is not complete.
Section 3. Splitting the unsplittable, or musha.
So what happens if you want to gift a share in a property that hasn't been divided up yet? Say, a portion of a larger estate that you co-own. This brings us to a really fascinating legal concept known as the doctrine of musha. Musha basically refers to undivided property or a share in a property. The law handles this in a very practical way, split into 2 categories based mostly on physics. If the property can be physically divided, but you just didn't bother dividing it before handing over a share, the gift is called fasid, which means irregular. Now, it's not totally void, it's not batil, but it is irregular. However, if the property literally cannot be divided, the gift of a shared portion is perfectly valid right out of the gate.
Let's use a brilliant analogy to make this concrete: a staircase. Imagine you and your sibling co-own a building. You obviously cannot physically cut a shared staircase in half without completely destroying its entire purpose. So the law sensibly makes an exception. If you gift an undivided share of a property that is physically incapable of division, like that staircase, the gift is 100% valid.
Section 4. Strings attached and revocations.
Okay, let's troubleshoot because real life is messy. What if you try to put conditions on the gift or suddenly change your mind? First up, contingent gifts.
If you tie a gift to a random, uncertain future event, saying something like, "This estate is yours, but only if Zara returns from the USA," the law steps in and says, "Absolutely not. The entire gift is void. You just cannot hold property in legal limbo waiting to see if some random event happens."
But listen to this, because there's a massive difference between a contingent gift and a conditional gift, with what the law calls a repugnant condition. Let's say you give someone a house, but you add a condition. You can never, ever sell this property. Well, that condition is repugnant to the very nature of ownership. It's exactly like gifting someone a car but telling them they aren't allowed to drive it. In this scenario, the law does something super clever. The gift itself remains totally valid, but that silly condition, it's completely voided. They get the house and they can absolutely sell it if they want to.
Now, what about revocation? What if you want to take the gift back? It all comes down to a strict timeline based on execution, meaning, has that delivery of possession actually happened yet? If you want to take the gift back before it's fully executed, you have total freedom. Go ahead, revoke it any time. But once that baton is officially passed and execution is complete, you lose that unilateral power. You can't just knock on their door and demand it back. You'll actually need to get a court to step in and intervene.
But be incredibly careful here, because there are specific real-world scenarios where a hiba becomes completely 100% irrevocable, even with a court's help. If the gift is between a husband and wife, you cannot take it back. If the donor and donee are within prohibited degrees of consanguinity, like a parent and child, it's locked in, it's irrevocable. And on a purely practical level, if the donee has died, or if the property itself has been converted, lost, or destroyed, the door is permanently closed on revocation.
Section 5. Gifts with an exchange.
Let's move into our final section and look at some advanced variations. Everything we've covered so far was just a simple gift with zero consideration. But what happens when a gift involves an exchange of something in return? Let's compare two distinct types because getting this right is essential. First, we have Hiba bil Iwaz, which translates to a gift with an exchange. Think of gifting a house in return for a highly valuable ring. In legal effect, this actually acts like a sale. And because it's treated like a sale, that strict rule of immediate delivery isn't compulsory. It's irrevocable right away, and you can freely transfer an undivided musha share. On the flip side, we have Hiba bil shart ol Iwaz. This is a gift with a stipulated condition for an exchange in the future, like agreeing to assume someone's debts in exchange for their property. Because this one starts as a gift, delivery is absolutely essential, and the rules of musha definitely apply. Plus, it remains revocable right up until that future consideration is finally paid.
The really crucial takeaway here, though, is where these two types eventually end up. Once these specialized gifts are completed and the actual exchanges are made, they effectively convert to a sale-like status. And because they become sales, they both suddenly become subject to shufa, which is the Islamic doctrine of preemption. This gives certain people, like co-owners or close neighbors, the legal right to step in and purchase the property before any outside buyer gets a chance.
So we've covered the basics, the three absolute steps, the fascinating nuances of undivided property and conditional exchanges. But let's zoom out for a second and look at the whole picture. Under this law, a legally binding, completely irrevocable transfer of a person's total wealth can happen just by speaking a declaration out loud and passing the baton, without a single piece of registered paper. It leaves us with a pretty powerful question to end on. How secure are your own unwritten promises? It really puts into perspective the immense weight and the absolutely legal power of our words. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the legal frameworks that shape our world.